Imagine a world teetering on the brink, an empire crumbling from within. In the heart of this chaos, a figure emerges from the Siberian wilderness, a man whose name would become synonymous with mystery, power, and scandal. This is the story of Grigori Rasputin. How did a simple peasant, a self-proclaimed holy man, ascend to such unimaginable influence within the most powerful dynasty in Europe? How did he come to be worshipped by the very elite he was meant to serve? His journey from obscurity to the inner sanctum of the Romanovs is a tale that defies belief. A chilling narrative of desperation, manipulation, and the seductive allure of the unknown. This is not just history. It is a psychological thriller, a deep dive into the human need for hope in the face of despair. We will unravel the enigma of Rasputin, exploring the true reasons behind his extraordinary power and the dark secrets that ultimately led to his demise. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the Mad Monk. At the dawn of the 20th century, the Russian Empire was a colossus built on shifting sands. Centuries of autocratic rule had left a vast, diverse population simmering with discontent. Social unrest, economic disparity, and political repression were the hallmarks of a society on the precipice of revolution. The Romanov dynasty, led by Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, clung to power with an increasingly tenuous grip. Nicholas, a man of deep personal piety but limited political acumen, struggled to navigate the treacherous currents of modernity. His wife, Alexandra, a German princess, was equally devout but fiercely protective of her family and deeply suspicious of the Russian court. Their world was one of opulent palaces and ancient traditions, yet it was profoundly isolated from the realities of their vast empire. This isolation, coupled with a profound sense of divine right, blinded them to the growing storm outside their palace walls. The stage was set for a figure who could exploit this vulnerability, a man who promised salvation in an age of uncertainty. The greatest vulnerability of the Romanovs was not political, but deeply personal. Their only son, Alexei, the heir to the vast Russian Empire, suffered from hemophilia. This devastating genetic disorder meant that even the slightest bump or bruise could lead to life-threatening internal bleeding. For the Tsar and Tsarina, Alexei's illness was a constant source of agonizing fear and profound secrecy. They desperately sought a cure, consulting countless doctors, healers, and mystics from across Europe. Each failed attempt deepened their despair, leaving them vulnerable to anyone who offered a glimmer of hope. The medical science of the time offered no solutions, only palliative care. The royal couple, devout Orthodox Christians, turned increasingly to faith and the supernatural. They believed that divine intervention was their only recourse, opening the door for unconventional figures to enter their lives. This desperate search for a miracle would ultimately lead them to the most controversial figure in Russian history. Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin was born in a remote Siberian village, a place far removed from the grandeur of St. Petersburg. His early life was unremarkable, marked by peasant labor and a reputation for being a bit of a rogue. Yet even then, whispers of unusual abilities followed him. He embarked on a spiritual journey, traveling to monasteries and holy sites across Russia. During these wanderings, he cultivated an image as a starets, a holy man with prophetic visions and healing powers. His piercing gaze, unkempt appearance, and unconventional spiritual practices set him apart. Rasputin's charisma was undeniable. He possessed a raw, earthy magnetism that captivated those he met. He spoke in parables, often quoting scripture, but his wisdom seemed to stem from a deeper, more intuitive understanding of human nature. He was a master of psychological insight, able to discern the unspoken fears and desires of those around him. His reputation as a healer and mystic slowly spread, reaching the ears of influential figures in the Russian Orthodox Church and eventually the highest echelons of society. He arrived in St. Petersburg not as a supplicant, but as a man already imbued with a certain mystique, ready to fulfill a destiny he believed was divinely ordained. Rasputin's introduction to the Romanov family was orchestrated through a network of well-meaning but misguided socialites and religious figures. They believed he was a genuine holy man, a true man of God who could bring spiritual solace to the troubled imperial family. His reputation for healing, particularly through prayer, preceded him. The critical moment came when Alexei suffered one of his most severe hemophiliac episodes. Doctors were helpless, and the Tsarevich's life hung by a thread. In their utter desperation, the Tsarina and Tsar turned to Rasputin. What happened next would forever alter the course of Russian history. Rasputin was summoned to the palace. He sat by Alexei's bedside, praying, speaking calmly, and reportedly, simply holding the boy's hand. Miraculously, Alexei's bleeding stopped, and he began to recover. Whether this was due to Rasputin's hypnotic presence, a reduction in the boy's anxiety, or simply a natural remission of symptoms, the Romanovs were convinced. For Alexandra, this was undeniable proof of Rasputin's divine connection. He had succeeded where all others had failed. He had saved her son. From that moment on, Rasputin became an indispensable figure in their lives, a spiritual anchor in a sea of uncertainty. His influence was not merely tolerated, it was embraced, cherished, and fiercely protected. How did Rasputin achieve such profound influence? It wasn't simply about healing Alexei. His power stemmed from a masterful understanding of human psychology, particularly the vulnerabilities of those in positions of immense power and isolation. The Romanovs, despite their imperial status, were deeply insecure and profoundly lonely. Rasputin offered them something no one else could: hope, and a sense of control in a world spiraling out of control. He spoke to their spiritual needs, validating their deep faith and offering a direct line to the divine. For Alexandra, he was a prophet, a conduit for God's will, and the only one who could truly alleviate her constant fear for Alexei. He was a master of suggestion, using his piercing gaze and calm demeanor to project an aura of authority and spiritual power. He understood the power of belief, not just in God, but in himself as an instrument of that belief. He provided emotional stability, a sense of security that the rigid court etiquette and political machinations could never offer. Furthermore, Rasputin was a shrewd observer of human nature. He knew how to flatter, how to intimidate, and how to exploit weaknesses. He presented himself as a simple, unpretentious man, a stark contrast to the duplicity of the court. This authenticity, whether genuine or feigned, resonated deeply with the isolated imperial couple. He became their confidant, their spiritual advisor, and their most trusted ally. As Rasputin's influence grew, so did the whispers and outright accusations. His unconventional lifestyle, his alleged orgies, and his increasingly brazen interference in state affairs became the subject of widespread scandal. He was accused of corruption, debauchery, and even treason. The Russian aristocracy, the church, and even members of the imperial family viewed him with growing alarm and disgust. They saw him as a charlatan, a manipulative peasant who had bewitched their beloved Tsarina and was leading the empire to ruin. His presence at court undermined the credibility of the monarchy and fueled public resentment. Rumors of his sexual exploits and his supposed control over the Tsarina became rampant, further eroding public trust in the Romanovs. Pamphlets and caricatures depicting him as a demonic figure circulated widely. The term Mad Monk became his infamous moniker, encapsulating the fear and loathing he inspired. Despite the mounting evidence and the pleas from trusted advisors, Nicholas and Alexandra remained steadfast in their defense of Rasputin. Their unwavering belief in his divine mission blinded them to the catastrophic damage he was inflicting on their reputation and the stability of their rule. They saw criticism of Rasputin as an attack on their family, their faith, and, ultimately, on God himself. The escalating tension surrounding Rasputin reached a fever pitch during World War I. With Nicholas II at the front commanding the army, Tsarina Alexandra was left in charge of domestic affairs, heavily influenced by Rasputin's advice. His recommendations for ministerial appointments and military strategy were often disastrous, further destabilizing the government. Patriotic Russians, convinced that Rasputin was a German agent or simply a destructive force, began to plot his demise. They believed that removing him was the only way to save the monarchy and the nation. This was not a simple act of murder. It was a desperate attempt to sever the cancerous growth they believed was consuming Russia. A group of conspirators, including Prince Felix Yusupov, a wealthy aristocrat and relative of the imperial family, and Vladimir Purishkevich, a right-wing politician, meticulously planned his assassination. Their motive was not personal vendetta, but a perceived patriotic duty. They saw themselves as saviors of the empire. On the night of December 29, 1916, Rasputin was lured to Yusupov's palace. What followed was a macabre and almost unbelievable sequence of events. He was poisoned with cyanide-laced cakes and wine, shot multiple times, beaten, and finally, thrown into the icy Neva River. Yet, even in death, Rasputin seemed to defy the natural order, his legend growing with each failed attempt to kill him. Rasputin's death did not save the Romanov dynasty. In fact, it may have accelerated its collapse. Within months, the February Revolution erupted. leading to the abdication of Nicholas II and the eventual execution of the entire imperial family. The Mad Monk's shadow loomed large over the final, tragic chapter of the Romanovs. His story remains one of the most compelling and controversial in history. Was he a genuine mystic, a charlatan, a master manipulator, or simply a man who found himself in an extraordinary position at a pivotal moment? The truth is likely a complex blend of all these elements. Rasputin's legend endures because he embodies fundamental human anxieties and aspirations. He represents the seductive power of belief, the dangers of unchecked influence, and the desperate search for meaning in a chaotic world. His life serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of power and the destructive consequences of blind faith. Even today, historians, conspiracy theorists, and the general public remain fascinated by Rasputin. His life continues to be dissected, debated, and dramatized, a testament to the enduring mystery of a Siberian peasant who held an empire in his thrall. He was a mirror, reflecting the hopes, fears, and superstitions of an age on the brink of profound change. The tale of Grigori Rasputin is more than just a historical footnote. It is a profound exploration of human nature, power dynamics, and the thin line between faith and delusion. His rise was a symptom of a deeply troubled society, and his influence a testament to the Romanovs' desperate vulnerability. We have journeyed from the desolate Siberian plains to the opulent palaces of St. Petersburg, witnessing the improbable ascent of a man who defied all expectations. We have explored the psychological factors that allowed him to captivate an empress, and the political machinations that ultimately led to his violent end. But even after all this, the core question remains. What do you think was the true source of Rasputin's power? Was it divine intervention, hypnotic suggestion, or simply the desperate need of a royal family clinging to hope? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into one of history's most enigmatic figures as intriguing as we did, please like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories from the annals of time. Your engagement helps us bring more untold histories to light. If this caught your attention, the next video uncovers the events that changed everything. Watch it now to complete the timeline. Don't miss it for anything.